Now, in particular today, on behalf of the people of the state of Washington, I want to say thank you and congratulations to a great leader in our state and a great leader in our nation, the longtime leader of the Quinault Indian Nation, Joe DeLaCruz. Frankly, Joe, Billy, and I have been friends for longer than any of us would like to admit. We started at a very young age, right, Joe? But it's a friendship based upon those things that only real, true friendships can be based upon. That's honesty and truth and commitment to work for progress and fairness for all people. This is really the key to the story of Joe DeLaCruz. Been a leader in so many ways in making sure that we in the state of Washington and we all across the United States recognize the tremendous contribution of our Native Americans. He is the leader that has led to do that. And so through all the years of work that I've had the opportunity to work with him, I am so glad it is recognized today. And on behalf of the people of the state of Washington, I want to say thank you and congratulate Joe DeLaCruz.
It's very difficult for someone like me to stand up here and be recognized as I am today, but I'm honored and proud. And things like this wouldn't happen to any leader if it wasn't for friends like Governor Mike Lowry, Billy Frank, and a lot of colleagues that I've worked with throughout the years. Many of them have moved on to a better place with a great spirit. And I've worked with leaders across this nation, in North America, Central America, and South America. And one thing you look back at, and one thing we're taught as Indian people, and Mike mentioned what it's all about is the children. And the children are elders. The other thing that I spent my lifetime working for, the governor says great nations like great men keep their word. When I went and moved home, it was very clear that to me, in researching Indian federal relationships, that basically the United States never kept its word. When you look back through every aspect of history, their policy was a policy to terminate. It was not just a policy that happened in 1953. Every piece of legislation that passed from the Indian Removal Act in the 1830s to the Dawes General Law to the Indian Reorganization Act were actually laws of the United States to assimilate Indian people. And just to make a point, when I first started traveling to Washington, D.C. and working with other Indian leaders in the National Congress of American Indians, it became very obvious that the statement that I just made is true. When you looked at a map of the United States and you seen 155 million to 160 million acres of Indian reserved land that was reserved by sacred treaty that had dwindled from 1920 to the 50s to 55 million acres. So you had a trustee that was supposed to be protecting our people and protecting our land that basically became the last big real estate agent when it came to Indian lands. And those are the type of things that I began looking at. The other thing that it became clear to me that not only in the state of Washington, but in this country, that our predecessors had accepted the United States Constitution, and basically from the earliest court cases that went before the Supreme Court, they accepted the judiciary branch of the United States in those early cases of the Cherokees in Georgia. And they built a whole framework of Indian law from that premises. It wasn't until, again, I was involved with other Indian leaders. No one can do these things by themselves. Sam Deloria, and a lot of them, we formed the American Indian Law Center at the University of New Mexico. And out of that, we began graduating Indian attorneys from various universities in this country Today there's over 1,500 Indian attorneys, but it was out of those earlier groups that we began seeing some of the things began to change when we were going to court against the United States. And a lot had happened since I first went to Washington, D.C. in 1967, or even came to Olympia in 1967 to meet with the governor, which was Governor Dan Evans then. People who weren't doing the powwows like we are here today. In the state of Washington, we didn't have any Indian schools like we have here today, with these fine young Indian children being taught back the culture, some of the things of their culture, and trying to learn how to walk a two-path way of life and become productive people. One of the things I've seen over the last 20 years, I work across this nation with people like Billy. I've known Mike Lowry since he was a young city councilman in the city of Seattle, where Bernie Whitebear and I went to him for help to get a piece of Fort Lawton for Indian people. And today the Daybreak Star Indian Arts Center is there on Fort Lawton because of our work with a young city councilman, Governor Mike Lowry, back then, years ago. And it was through networks of leaders. And like I said, in the state of Washington, the Dutch Kinleys, the Roger Jims from Yakima, the Lucy Covingtons, a lot of those people have moved on. Esmeralda or Everelda, Sister Bell, and Raleigh. Keith and Jim, you get up here too. I'm trying to go down by their ages. My brother Ed and his wife Betty. My sister Arlene, her daughter Julia, and Kelvin. Anybody else?
How about me?
Cynthia, my niece. Little Gail, my granddaughter. Sid. Katrina. How can I forget you, Katrina? Come on up here. Myrna, my baby sister Myrna and her husband and her boy, Artie. And my grandson, Anthony.
Go. Jennifer.
Anthony O'Bucket and Anthony Seymour. Stephanie. Jim. Come on up here, all of you. I'm trying Philip. I have two sons, Joe and Steve, and my brother Franklin and James. They're not here, they're working today. So this is my family, the family that supported me, that helped me, and Jennifer, my niece Jennifer Scott, her husband Randy taking pictures out here. They've supported me through a lot of tough times. And when I first moved back home, and there wasn't many tribes, none of the tribes had any money. And many of us joke about the 60s and 70s travel, taking dried salmon or canned salmon in our suitcases, chipping in to buy a little bottle of Kool-Aid or something, and that's the way we traveled. And basically, it was the support of the family, how tribal leaders went to Washington in the early 60s and 70s. And tribes have come a long ways today. We're into a lot of economic development things. Gaming is helping a lot of tribes. We beat the Internal Revenue on trying to tax fish. And a lot of the Indian children, our Indian youth, have an opportunity that is looking on. And you have several Indian organizations, such as the National Association of Indian Science and Engineers, that provide scholarships. The American Indian Law Center works on scholarships for lawyers. So today we have more opportunity for our people and our youth to move on to education and continue this that I've been a small part of with many other leaders across this state. And I want to thank the students of WaHeLut and the people of Frank's Landing for acknowledging me and what little part I played in a lot of things. I think this benefit tribal people no matter where they come from. So it's these type of schools that we need to see that there's support for. And Billy and I kind of worked on that a few years ago, but there's always a need for dollars when it comes to education. I also